Our reading today is from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This week's reading is Reincarnation, the Spiral Staircase. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the book of Revelation, chapter 3, Jesus Christ tells us, "Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out." There is a difference between church dogmas, which are based on reasoned deductions from scriptural statements, and the pronouncements of wisdom, which are based on the inner realization of scriptural truths. Reason, like a train, can only follow already existing tracks of human experience. Human memory, being short, is seldom able to cross back over the threshold of a person's present existence. Biblical references to previous lifetimes on earth are overlooked in the deductive process, and we find them therefore excluded from the body of official dogma. Nevertheless, such references exist. The Bible itself presents them, as does Jesus in this passage, not as abstract teaching, but as direct personal perception of truth. In the same way, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita silences Arjuna's reasonable doubts on the subject, not by reasoned argument, but by the frank statement contained in the 4th chapter of that great scripture. "Arjuna, you and I have passed through many births. I know all of them, though you, O chastiser of foes, recall them not." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Reading reminds me of the time during the construction of this beautiful temple. There was a woman who was soon to pass away, one of our members. She had had a very hard life and so forth, but she was also very intuitive, and Padma and I loved her dearly. She had a charming phrase about memory. She said, "I have a great memory," she said. "It's just really short." Let me get my bearings here. Reincarnation, deja vu all over again. Let's see, where's what I want? Anybody ever see the movie Groundhog Day? Okay, obviously, yes, of course you have. Well, and remember how Jimmy Stewart in A Wonderful Life, he was given the gift of seeing what the world would be had he not been present? Or Charles Dickens in Christmas Carol, right? The angel of the past, and present, and future gave him that great gift. Well, our memories being a little short, we don't seem to have that great gift, most of us, about where we've been and so on. Let's approach this way. Reincarnation. All right. So most of us have been born in the West and have the, you might say, the burden or the baggage, I guess, of thousands of years of teachings in which reincarnation didn't exist as a teaching. Did you know, however, that in 553 A.D., at the Second Council of Constantinople, which was boycotted by the then Pope Vigilius, that was when the dogma of reincarnation was officially removed from church dogma. One of the greatest early church teachers, known as Origen, claimed in his writing that it had been taught since apostolic times. And so we'll come back to that. But I think we'll come back to that. Why don't we just stick with it right now? No, it's, imagine now. So they take it out, and you've got one life. Most of us are okay people, a lot of schmucks, and, we do some good things. We're not that good, we're not that bad. Most people aren't that bad because they don't have enough energy to be bad. And so there you are, stuck with this one life principle, this one life teaching. Well, what are you going to do? You add to that you're going to hell for eternity or heaven, you've got a problem on your hands. So what they come up with, they were like, making a Rube Goldberg with gum. And I remember one time I fixed an old car that had gotten in a wreck. I found the schematic for the wiring harness system in the dashboard, and I actually used bazooka bubble gum and got the lights to work and a few other things. So what did these Christian-type theologians come up with? Well, purgatory, you're not so good, you've got a few blemishes, so you get burned for a while, and then you're good to go for eternity. And those poor little babies who die at birth, they go where? Limbo. What do? I don't know, they're just in limbo. And it's just sort of very unsatisfying. And what do you do up there? But you strum a harp for eternity, praising the good Lord on the throne? I mean, come on. Does anybody aspire to that? I don't. Sure, life's got to be more interesting wherever you go. It certainly already is here. So, but there's an interesting point. I mentioned in my email Kriyananda, our founder, Swami Kriyananda, who was a direct disciple of Yogananda, once did a lecture on reincarnation. And afterwards, one of his students heard somebody going out the door, and she says, "Oh boy, we get to come back." And no, that's not the lesson. We have to come back. And so it is. And Kriyananda taught us this too. I don't know that I've seen it in Yogananda's writings, particularly on this point. But Kriyananda said something that meant a lot to me on this issue because, I meet in what I do, what we do here, I meet a lot of people who, feel like they are recovering from their Christian upbringing and so forth, and I understand that. I'm not one of them, but I understand it. And like so many other traumas in life, and there are many, at some point you just got to get over it. Reincarnation, we'll come back to that, karma and this and that. The point is we have to live. We have to let go. The fact that we can't let go is one of the reasons we can't remember, because we're so attached. And so he taught us, there was a divine reason why the dogma, and it is a dogma, of reincarnation was removed from Christian teaching. Because in those dark ages of materialism and relative human ignorance, as Swami Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, pointed out, and in describing and redefining the great wheel and cycle of time in which that all the great civilizations have taught down through the ages, he recalibrated the timing of that wheel and said that during what we are pleased to call most of recorded history, I'll just say roughly 2000 BC to a century or so ago, was the relatively dark era. It's already been shown that a lot of knowledge that we now know existed before 2000 BC was lost and was rediscovered. Things like the heliocentric theory of, the Earth going around the sun, something like that. So in any case, during such a time, that person's cry, "Oh boy, we get to come back," in other words, the threat of hellfire was pretty much more or less what people during such times needed to energize their will in order at least to be decently good. And that's about all they really got, because that's about all they could really do. And so the teaching of reincarnation was not a useful teaching, and isn't a useful teaching to this day for people who are of that relatively low consciousness. What can I get away with, right? I remember as a young boy going to confession, and so, I guess all the kids had this issue, but we had to make up sins because we couldn't remember if we'd really done anything that bad, A little different, a little older, but when you first start off, it's like, I don't know, I punched my sister, I got to come up with something. And so we needn't decry the whole issue, But most of the world, statistically, even a good percentage of Christians I've read, are at least open to the teaching of reincarnation. So why don't we remember? Well, as I said before, we can barely remember what we had for breakfast today or what we did yesterday or thought. Why should we remember a past life when we've gone through that entire cycle? Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras says that the siddhi, which is to say the psychic power of remembrance of past lives, comes only to the degree and to the extent we have achieved non-attachment to this life. Makes sense, right? To the extent we're identified with this body and this personality and being an American or Indian or whatever I identify with, to that degree, it veils our psychic insight into the past. And yet the fact is there are so many well-documented stories of children and remembrance. I could go on and on if this were a class or a lecture or something. It's not really, in a grouping like this, it's not really even a question. I think we all more or less either believe it or are open to it. But I do want to admit and say that, interestingly enough, I think, that the teaching of reincarnation is the one dogma, and it is a dogma, unless you already know it from inner experience, that is offered from the East, which is the linchpin for the entire Sanatana Dharma, the entire body of revelation that comes to us from India through down through the ages. Because without it, you can't really put the rest of it together. Because how are you going to achieve union with God, cosmic consciousness, in one life wherein we do pretty good, but not that good? Okay? We don't have any experience of cosmic consciousness. Do you think just by dying your physical body we become saints and angels? Would that be the truth? I would love it. And then we all could just pretty much figure out where the borderline is and, again, get away with it. So it's not that simple. And yet it unlocks. I mean, people ask in these crazy times of ours, people ask, well, how can we explain these things? How is it that you have even in supposedly democratic America, we basically have as many monarchies and dynasties as every other culture has ever had. You know, we had the Bush dynasty and almost had the Clinton dynasty. Maybe it's not over, I don't know. But how do some of these schmucks get up there? I don't know. It's karma. You can vote all you want and should, but you know, there's a lot more going on in our lives and in our world than we can account for reasonably. The suffering, certainly, first and foremost. The injustices, absolutely. Now, when someone's suffering, we don't roll out the dogma of reincarnation and, you know, you did it to yourself. That's a stupid thing to do. It's lacking in compassion. But if we step back from, and that's exactly why we can't see our past lives, because we barely have come to grips with accepting our suffering. It's so easy to blame other people, life circumstances. And I totally get that. I mean, the amount of such suffering in individual lives or in genocide in the lives of the karma of souls who have a group identity. Yogananda taught that whole nations have national karma. We don't want to get into that right now, do we? Someone once asked Yogananda, he said, well, gosh, take a look at Hitler. Won't he have to suffer for countless lifetimes? Yogananda said, God isn't a tyrant. It wasn't just one person's karma for what happened there. And so we need to, just as, you know, science offers to us a vision, a view rather, not a vision, a view of reality that makes us look so insignificant that what else could we do in the 20th century when that got rolled out? Well, we thought, well, it's all pretty meaningless. It's all just relative, right? And do what I want. And look what happened in the 20th century. And yet, through the insight of Sanatana Dharma, through the realization that, as Yogananda said in his autobiography, that the divine vision is center everywhere, circumference nowhere. The center of the universe, this vast universe, lies within the divine self. He said, after a vision of cosmic consciousness, he said, I cognize the Empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my own heart. You see, our significance is not our body, our personality, our wonderful talents, and so forth, nor is it all the shortcomings and the things we have not been so proud to reflect on. It's none of those things. It's the fact that being made in the image of God, at the heart of all restlessness and motion, the likes and dislikes, all of that resides the Holy Spirit, the divine child, the Christ child, the only begotten of the Father, Spirit, lies in our hearts and in every atom of creation, endowing all creation with the intelligence, the impulse, no less, to create, to become co-creators in this great cosmic drama. And so, in fact, I laugh, I just had thought, I've met at least 2 Cleopatras in my life. Isn't that amazing? And don't raise your hand if you're the third, because I'm pretty sure there's only one, although there could be several parallel universes. Maybe there's Cleopatras all everywhere, I don't know. I hope I don't really meet any in any case, but what I mean is all that stuff isn't that useful, because we are not all those things we've done, good, bad, or indifferent. The teaching of Sanatana Dharma, the teaching of yoga, is that at our center we are already free. It's not that big a deal that we don't remember all of that. In fact, as one ages in life, many people, not only do their memory, it's interesting, isn't it? That short-term memory goes, but long-term memory stays. What a bore. You get to hear the same old stupid stories from those, hey, Jerry, my kid, you remember when? I'm starting early. I think one of the reasons is, my God, you can't remember where you left your car keys, but I sure remember that time when, you got to talk about something, right? Really, do we? Okay. I'd prefer to remain silent. But anyway, one does have to be friendly. So it's a peculiar thing, because in one life, the repetition of those stories, the burden of those failures and regrets, resentments and disappointments are already overwhelming. For most of us, attached as we are to our individuality, our personality, if we had the recollectedness of many past lives, we'd be crushed psychologically and psychically. It's a gift to be reborn and have a fresh start. Yogananda once did a talk. You can buy it downstairs. I think it has the word reincarnation in it. A wonderful talk in which he does the sort of debating thing. He gives the reasons for just one life, and then he gives the reasons for many lives, and it's sort of charming in his own way to do it. But be that as it may, it really isn't that important in a sense. Right now is the only important thing there is. Around Yogananda, in his presence, and with those who got to live with him, like our founder, Swami Kriyananda, they spoke sort of casually about, reincarnation, who I was in a past life. He revealed, 3 or 4 past lives of his own, quite remarkably. One of which, for those who don't know, is probably 1 or 2, but anyway, remarkable to me is the life he revealed that he himself was William the Conqueror. There's a book downstairs about that whole thing, and interpreting the life of William from this particular and very odd point of view. But life is odd. And the more we realize its complexity, the more we, spiritually at least, should be motivated to seek the simplicity of the eternal now. Okay, so we have karma. All right. The key is actually to begin to still the reactive processes. And this is the great liberating key of Kriya Yoga, of meditation in general. Certainly an advanced technique like Kriya, beginning to give us power over our own reactivity. Because as our karma ripens, and for now, let's face it, when we say the word karma, we almost always mean bad karma. But there really isn't any good or bad. Karma just means action. It's the psychic, metaphysical reflection of the law of action and reaction, the law of cause and effect. I mean, just try to think for a minute. As you sow, so shall you reap, as Jesus put it. But we live our lives every day without thinking that what we're doing is based on the law. We expect that if we eat healthy, we'll be healthy. We expect that if we do this, that happens. We put the key in the car, and it fires up. What makes us think that the important things of our life aren't the result of our past action? And so there it is. We can't change it. I've spoken before about free will and how Anandamayi Ma, the woman saint who figures in Autobiography of a Yogi, once asked, and she was completely illiterate, but sages and pundits and so forth all over India would go to visit her because she was really a jnana yogi as well as a bhakti yogi, and anyway, she could give cryptic responses to some of the deep questions of human life. And she said, it's like being on a train. The train's going down the tracks. You can move from one car to another, maybe up and back along the train, but you're on the train, and it's not stopping till it reaches its destination. We Americans, so proud of our freedoms and so forth, and we, it's fine. It's our role and destiny in life, and it's a good thing. I wish we had them all back. Anyway, let's move on. We don't start affirming them, we're going to lose them. Anyway, so the lesson in that is that our only real freedom is inside. And through the practice of meditation, through the divine grace of attunement with God, and through the Guru especially, who acts as a living channel for that divine presence, which is really beyond our comprehension. I mean, anybody here know what infinity is? Let me know. And so through divine grace then, we can achieve the stillness of the reactive process through the natural means, which starts with our own breathing, through breath control, pranayama. We can learn to control the heart. First the breath, which controls the heart. The two, in turn, affect the mind. And by gradually stilling heart, mind, and breath, we can achieve increasingly an experience of a reality that's transcendent beyond the confines of the human form, the human psyche and personality, all that baggage of memories, the desires and ambitions that we have, all of which clutter up our ability to see. And just as every night in sleep we're free from that baggage in a subconscious way, and so meditation mimics that, but takes it to a super conscious level, where we're in that state beyond thought, beyond action, and so forth, with the refinement of the feelings. We can experience that transcendent state that we are free, and therefore what happens is, as our karma ripens, and okay, let's face it, we mean bad karma when we say it, but in any case, it is bad to the ego because we suffer. But to the degree we live within, centered in the self within, when that karma ripens, We remain even-minded and cheerful amidst the duties, the drama of life. And in that way, the karma cannot hurt us. You see, the secret to overcoming our karmic baggage is to cut off the one thing to which it's attached, the ego principle. We can't change the karma, but we can change our reaction to what happens to us in life. This is the secret. This is really why past lives don't matter that much. Patanjali says that when we achieve ultimate final freedom in God, we still have a lot of baggage. It's simply that we've reached that center point. And through that center point, which is to say the eye of wisdom, through the spiritual eye, we transcend this form. But we still have all that other stuff. But we are now free. He says we can incarnate into multiple bodies, we can take our time, we can help other people, sort of like the Buddhist Bodhisattva teaching, same idea. We come back, we don't really care anymore, we're free. But you see, we don't have to worry about, do the best we can, of course. Live in the right way. Don't try to accrue more karma. But nonetheless, when we achieve that freedom, we can work out the rest of the story from that particular point of view. It's not an easy life to remain, as it were, above, non-reactive to, or... See, you could say, I've never heard it said, but it makes sense to me to say, that instead of saying ego all the time, because we don't really know what that is, let's just say the reactive process, because that's all the ego is. The soul identified, as Yogananda put it, with the body and the personality. And it's basically our likes and dislikes. Patanjali, in the second stanza of the Yoga Sutras, gave the key in one sentence that almost nobody understands. Yogas, citta, vritti, nirodha. He said that the state of yoga, transcendent state of the soul, is achieved to the degree we have achieved a permanent relaxation, neutralization from the reactive process, no longer identifying with it. And therein, interestingly, we can enjoy this world for what it really is, entertainment. Not always very funny, but entertainment, because it is nothing but a manifestation of God. But until you achieve that state, it's get away from my ocean of suffering, Krishna says to Arjuna. Because whatever good karma most of us have had in this life to be relatively healthy and comfortable and secure and successful and that sort of thing, you don't have to go very far out those doors to see millions and billions who don't enjoy any of these things. And you don't really know when your good karma's all used up and you have to start over again. You have to want freedom. You don't get out just by mechanical means of huffing and puffing or giving to charity or any of these things. It doesn't work that way. Oh, it's good enough it's better to have good karma than bad karma, yes. And good karma is more closely aligned with an expanded consciousness, yes. But we have to actually want to know God. We have to want to be free. Nothing happens mechanically. It only comes from the one thing the divine doesn't possess. God has all the wisdom he wants, Yogananda would say. He is everything. There's one thing God doesn't have. Your attention, your interest, ultimately, your love. This is the key to transcending reincarnation. Reincarnation really isn't a very important subject at all. It's interesting, I agree. But the real key is within thee.
I'd like to read to you Yogananda's words from Whispers from Eternity that Hriman selected. Bless me that I may know that I am dreaming, even though my senses tell me I'm awake. As we rest in sleep, wake in the morning into our daily round of desperate seeming but only half-conscious activity, then fall back to sleep again at night, so also do we pass fleetingly from birth to life to death again, waking ever and again in new bodies, dashing about our appointments and our commitments, delighting in them or groaning at their importunity, then finding ourselves forced to leave everything at death's next summons. Dream after dream of ceaseless earthly struggles. On the sleigh of incarnations, we find ourselves sliding by hopes and disappointments, victories and failures, fulfillments and disillusionments. When the smooth snow of easy passage melts and the underlying ice of insecurity breaks, we find ourselves plunged into heaving seas, eddies of gay, then desperate laughter, sargosses of cloying involvements, vast calms of indifference, all only dreams. When at last I awoke in thee, I discovered that I'd been dreaming all along. I'd only thought I was awake. Oh, Amen. I'd like to give you an opportunity